Hello and welcome to Stand Up, where every day I'm talking to the smartest people in the world about the most important issues that impact your life, your community, your family, your planet, your soul, all of it. From healthcare to technology, finance to education, foreign policy and mental health, and so much more. We've got you covered here for just $5 a month. You can help support the show. Joining me today, Dr. Peter Hotez, who is a vaccine scientist behind vaccines that have saved literally millions of people's lives, especially in developing countries, for years. Hotez, a heroic scientist, has been under attack from the anti-vax community for decades, even though he wrote a book literally titled, Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism, My Journey as a Vaccine Scientist, Pediatrician, and Autism Dad. And by the way, he's got a new book coming out in September. You can pre-order now, The Deadly Rise of Antiscience, A Scientist's Warning. Peter and I sat down last night to talk about the latest attacks that he's dealing with as a result of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s candidacy for President of the United States. He went on with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan and RFK challenged Peter Hotez to debate on the Joe Rogan show. Elon Musk jumped on board, and it was a real shit show online yesterday. Probably the craziest day for Hotez, culminating in some nut job coming literally to his house and harassing him. Today's episode is not a full-length show. It's what I call, Can You Talk Real Quick? Where because I have contacts of so many important, brilliant experts, I'm able to get them on the phone and turn it around real quick, post it for you to hear so that we can all learn together. Just after I taped my interview with Peter Hotez, he went on MSNBC with the brilliant Mehdi Hasan, who had this to say. I think it sets us up perfectly. Just part of his commentary last night before he talked to Dr. Peter Hotez, of course, after me, because, I got the scoop.
One Joseph James Rogan, podcasting juggernaut, former Fear Factor host and proud free thinker, made quite a bit of news yesterday. No, not for once again spewing racial slurs or spreading anti-Semitic tropes or platforming some infamous transphobe. This time it was for a conversation with RFK Jr. that wasn't exactly, shall we say, tethered to reality. Highlights from the episode include Kennedy, now a Democratic presidential candidate, informing the audience that he's taken precautions in case the CIA tries to assassinate him, Kennedy doubling down on his debunked claim that vaccines cause autism, and Kennedy asserting that Wi-Fi radiation can, quote, cause cancer and open your blood-brain barrier.
Good recap of the conversation between Rogan and RFK, but a little more from Mehdi Hasan.
Rogan and RFK Jr.'s fear-mongering about vaccines was even more disturbing. So disturbing that Dr. Peter Hotez, a renowned global health expert and the co-director of the Center for Vaccine Development at Texas Children's Hospital, tweeted out a Vice article critical of all the misinformation spouted by the pair. That was not well received by Joe Rogan, who responded by asking Hotez to come on his program and debate RFK Jr., promising to pay $100,000 to a charity of his choice if Hotez agreed to do so. And that was just the beginning. Shortly thereafter, Elon Musk, the chief twit himself, the man who once predicted that COVID would be gone by April of 2020, logged on to declare that Hotez's reticence to engage with an infamous anti-vaxxer was evidence that Hotez, quote, knows he's wrong. Look, I literally wrote a book about the art and importance of debate. And yet I am telling you tonight that I am tired of the incessant debate me bro mantra from conspiracy nuts on social media. Because it is never a good idea for an award-winning, world-renowned, peer-reviewed vaccine scientist or an actual expert in any academic field to debate an unhinged crank who thinks Bill Gates wants to control us with microchips or that chemicals in the water are turning kids transgender. And yes, RFK Jr. has said both of those things. I mean, set aside for a moment that Joe Rogan wouldn't even be a neutral moderator of such a debate. He's endorsed anti-vax nonsense many times before. But you just can't, in general, debate with conspiracists and loons. You can't debate whether up is down, white. They never change their minds, and they win just by you agreeing to share a platform with them. What's the expression? Never wrestle with a pig, you both get dirty, and the pig gets 40,000 new followers on Twitter.
All right, I thought that was excellent by Mehdi Hasan. And now my conversation, which was a lot longer and more thorough than what you get on cable news, though it was great. I'm glad he's getting out there, with Dr. Peter Hotez, Dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine and Professor of Pediatrics and Molecular Virology and Microbiology at Baylor University College School of Medicine, where he's also the co-director of the Texas Children's Center for Vaccine Development and Texas Children's Hospital Endowed Chair of Tropical Pediatrics. Very smart guy, written several books. I already mentioned a couple of them, but pre-order his book right now, The Deadly Rise of Antiscience. Peter, of course, is on Twitter where he's being attacked all day, so always nice to throw him something nice for joining me here on the show. Let's do it, Dr. Hotez. All right. Well, I've got him now. I've just told you a bit about the controversy. Dr. Peter Hotez, thank you for joining me. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. Thank you, my friend, for being such a support.
Oh, it's easy, and you give me the courage because it pales in comparison to the danger that you put yourself in every day just by speaking out at this point. I mean, today you were harassed at your home. Is that right?
Yeah. A couple of anti-vaccine people. Usually what they do is it's unusual for them to do it at my home. Usually it's either my place of work or if I'm giving a lecture at a publicized venue, they kind of come up to you and shove a cell phone cam in your face and say provocative things to you in the hope that you say something stupid. So they'll edit it and put it up in YouTube or some other social media platform. But this time they were at my home laying in wait.
That's really disconcerting. I'm sorry about that. We talked earlier because, a lot of people obviously.
And I was looking my Sunday best, Father's Day best in my when it's 100 degrees outside and sweaty but fortunately I had my Houston Texans t-shirt
that was good.
on, so I showed some loyalty.
At least you had that, and you had a silly hat. Nothing about it made nothing about that outfit made anyone think you're a shill. Put it that way. You look like a guy just trying to survive the Texas heat at that point.
Right.
This Sunday was a really crazy day, June 19th. It was Father's Day, of course. You're a proud dad. You wrote a whole book about your daughter, and you were attacked by the triumvirate of Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, and RFK Jr. Have you seen a day quite like this in your career and since all of this really heated up as of COVID's beginning?
Well, RFK Jr. has gone after me over the years and written untrue, terrible things about me in his books and in his writings and his blogs and his Instagram. So that, although he'd gone sort of quiet for a while, so I thought that was kind of in the past. But then, Joe Rogan, I always thought I had a good relationship with, and been on his show a couple of times, and even before he was Joe Rogan, even before, he had his, he had other shows I had been on. So I thought, I had a relationship with him. I didn't see that coming, and I didn't understand the pile on from Elon Musk, which I have never really had much of a bone to pick with him. So I didn't know I was sort of taken aback. And of course, between the three of them, they pretty much have every follower on Twitter. Yeah. So the amplification effect was massive. So,
and it has been all day. Have you ever seen the kind of volume and rhetoric, though? Is this day unprecedented in social media and in real life? Someone showing up at your house the same day?
No, that's why it's just been this pretty much 24, 36 hour barrage of nasty. The anti-vaccine, anti-science aggression does come in waves. There's no question about that. And I think in this case, I saw a pickup a few days ago because Steve Bannon publicly declared me a criminal, quote unquote. And I don't know where that came from. So it's not going to be a good week when Steve Bannon calls you a criminal. And then
go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you want to address any of the untrue, hurtful things RFK Jr. said about you in his book?
Well, it's always the stuff that I'm somehow linked to pharma companies. And, the term that's often used is pharma shill. That's the buzzword of the day. And so a lot of it, stems from that. But, I don't take pharma money. We developed two COVID, and we've talked about it before, Pete. Sure. We've developed two COVID vaccines for global health, low cost alternative vaccines that work really well with no patent or minimizing strings attached to India and Indonesia. 100 million doses administered. So, we developed a model that showed that you can bypass pharma under pandemic threats that hadn't been done before, and to my knowledge, and so, and one would think that someone like, RFK or Joe Rogan or even Elon, who, is so angry at the pharma companies, that they would see me as part of the solution instead of someone to attack and just make up phony baloney stuff that I'm linked to pharma companies. So I don't understand the rationale. I don't understand the logic.
That's one of the things that he said. I mean, do you have any links? It wouldn't be weird for you to have any links to pharmaceutical companies. You're in that world, but you work at the university level and develop your vaccines through a budget that you get from the university.
That's right. My salary is paid for by the college, and Texas Children's Hospital, and I get research grants that offset some of my salary. That's how it works. And academic, I don't get extra money for it. It just picks up part of my salary. So the university doesn't have to be on the hook for the whole salary. And those come from the National Institutes of Health. They come from private foundations. One of the things they get really upset about is Gates Foundation funding. I don't have Gates Foundation funding. Haven't had it for the last decade. I'd like to, but we don't. And somehow they see Gates Foundation funding is pharma money, which I never really understood. That's a nonprofit 501c3. So no, I mean, no links to.
You don't get a bonus for every million children's lives you've saved with your vaccines?
Yeah, if only, right? So
I mean, that would be a moral incentive, by the way.
One would think, yeah, it's not a bad idea, but
yeah. So in terms of links to pharma,
I don't want to say I'm pristine, but I mean, it's pretty good, right? And I mean, what other revenue do I make? I mean, I write my books with Johns Hopkins University Press. It's a university press, and so I don't make very modest royalties on that. So no, I mean, I have a very solid middle class life. I'm not complaining. I love my life. I chose this. I was able to put 3 out of my 4 kids through college, and except Rachel, who has autism and special needs and couldn't do college. So, I mean, and I live modestly, as the guy who filmed in front of my time home must have seen.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't pulling up to a palatial mansion in River Oaks, So
in terms of any other thing, did you read RFK's book? I don't even know if it's out yet. Did he send you an advanced copy? Did he contact you?
He has a book called The Real Anthony Fauci, where he went after me quite a bit. But quite honestly, I get so demoralized when I read. I mean, as soon as I see some nasty stuff, I just close the book, because if I start reading it in detail, I just find it too demoralizing. Then he did another interview about the book with someone who, and I guess he repeated a lot of that nonsense, and I saw that one.
As far as your relationship with Joe Rogan, I just want to get this on the record, because you told me this years ago. I've been on Joe's show, and you've been on Joe's show, I think 3 times. And
I think he would have you. Go ahead.
He would have you on because you are a respected, credible voice. And I'm not sure how much he challenged you at that point. But when COVID began and he started trafficking in some of these conspiracy theories and having doubts and all of that, you contacted Joe via email, via DM on Twitter. You guys had correspondence before, and he never replied to you. Is that correct?
Well, I was on twice on, I don't know if it was called the Joe Rogan Experience or what, but back when he was in LA before he moved it to Austin.
Pre-COVID.
And what's that?
Pre-COVID.
Well, once was pre-COVID, once was as COVID was getting underway. And, he could be challenging and I can't say it was totally smooth, but it was reasonable. And I thought it was a very good discussion. Again, how we're making vaccines, out of the pharma sector, doing this nonprofit, making vaccines for the world. And then afterwards he came to Houston for his comedy show in the Toyota Center. And I went backstage with my youngest son, and we hung out, had a beer. It was fun. And I even thought of him as sort of a friend of sorts. And then when COVID really started getting bad, I wrote to him, emailed him a couple of times, several times in 2021, and then no response, and once more in 2022. One, to talk about our vaccines and, again, how we're bypassing the pharma sector. And also, I was concerned because he was starting to invite some pretty hard-hitting anti-vaccine types on his show. And as that Delta wave was starting to roll through the South, through the southern states and my state of Texas, you were seeing all these unvaccinated Texans and my neighbors losing their lives because they believed the anti-vaccine disinformation. And I wanted to come on and, tell people to get their vaccines. But at that time, he didn't respond.
Never responded to you.
Yeah, that's right.
See, I think that's cowardly. I think that I'm in this and have been in the same exact boat as he has been my whole career. And before I would accuse somebody or before I would make certain assumptions or certainly assertions on my show, and I have a much smaller footprint than he does, I would call someone like you, especially if I was going to say them about you, especially if they were opposite of what you'd been saying. You know why I do that? Because I have your number. Because we've talked before, because we have a prior relationship. That's how journalism is done, and that's what any responsible person with a huge platform should do. So let me just get off my soapbox and ask you about this whole debate thing. RFK Jr. goes on with Joe Rogan this past week. He's been everywhere. He's running for president now. You made a comment about his appearance on Twitter. Joe Rogan then basically responded, I think it was this morning.
Oh, by the way, I retweeted I tweeted an article that was written in Vice magazine, and I emphasized some concerns about it, and because I thought, again, it was dangerous anti-vaccine rhetoric.
Yes, you wrote Spotify has stopped even sort of trying to
stem. That was the title of the article.
Stem Joe Rogan's vaccine misinformation. That's the title. That's the title of the Vice article. Robert Kennedy replies, Peter, let's have the respectful, congenial, informative debate that the American people deserve. Joe Rogan quotes it all. Peter, if you claim what RFK Jr. is saying is misinformation, I'm offering you $100,000, a charity of your choice. You're willing to debate him on my show with no time limit. Now, that was like 24 hours ago since we're talking, or less, maybe. But since then, so many other trolls who have a lot of money have jumped on and raised it to like $1 million. Are you giving any consideration to going on Joe Rogan and debating RFK Jr.?
Oh, is it $1 million now? Oh, wow.
That's one. Over at this conservative website, PJ Media, they've got a list now.
Is it actually people who pay their bills? I mean,
exactly. Well, I mean, like if you could legally guarantee the contract, all these people.
Here's the problem when you. Well, first of all, let me say a general concept about debating science. Yeah. And then let me make a more specific content about debating RFK Jr. So debate, I don't understand what it merely means to debate science. That's not the way we do science. I mean, I understand kind of what it means to debate 18th century Enlightenment philosophy and debate Rousseau and Hume and Bishop Berkeley. I understand what it means to debate in politics, but science is not typically done through debate. I mean, I suppose, there are some famous debates about evolution versus creationism, but generally, how is science done? It's done through writing scientific papers, submitting them, going through peer review, or in addition, you go to scientific conferences and you present your data in front of knowledgeable audiences for critical feedback, more often than not supportive feedback. That's how science is. That's not really done through debate. So I wouldn't even know how to do a debate in science, quite honestly. And then with Bobby, with Kennedy, as I called it when we were having conversations,
because you have talked to him privately before.
Oh yeah, multiple times, and we can talk about that too. But the frustration and when we had our conversations, the frustration was the goalposts kept moving because, and the whole assertions about vaccines, he's not the only one to do it. Others did it as well, but kept on switching up because the original assertion was the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. And then the scientific community did a lot of expensive studies to show that there was no link between the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine and autism. And then it was switched up. Okay, then it must be thimerosal preservative that used to be in vaccines. And and that was debunked. And then it was spacing vaccines too close together. And then it was aluminum vaccines. So you're always, kind of doing this, I don't know what you call it, whack-a-mole or moving the goalpost. And then it was the HPV vaccine for cervical cancer and other cancers. They said it caused infertility or autoimmunity. And so it became this kind of exhausting exercise. And then it was vaccines, given in pregnancy. So you were always, you never knew what was coming at you next. And then it was vaccines caused something called chronic illness, and whatever that is. And so that was, I found that very frustrating.
That was basically what the conversations were like with him when you talked to him.
That's my recollection. And I didn't. And after a while, you realize they weren't terribly productive. And I would assume that's more or less what it would be if I were to quote debate him on Joe Rogan. But then you have the other problem is. I'm looking at all this in horror because you have the harsh reality that so many Americans, including many in my state of Texas, needlessly died because they believed the anti-vaccine disinformation around COVID. Right. My estimates: 40,000 Texans needlessly died, 200,000 Americans, and so this has become a major killing force. And I'm also reluctant to give that kind of attention or raise that to a serious, as though that were something to be seriously entertained. So yeah, I don't see how one goes about quote either debating science in general and specifically debating RFK Jr. about this stuff.
Yeah, well, I fully agree with you. I wanted to ask you the question. I mean, all of certainly the really smart people that I respect talking about this have also said that what happens here is if you went on to debate someone who's not an expert, you're elevating their non-expertise, and they might be rhetorically able to pound the heck out of you, and you're not ready for this or that research or study, and these debates don't end up proving anything. Seth Abramson writes, the Hotez, Rogan, Musk silliness in a nutshell. Experts of whatever political stripe should always be willing to debate other experts of whatever political stripe. But experts should never debate abject fools posing as experts because they haven't earned the experts' time and attention. And that's just it. You've spent your entire career working on these specific scientific issues, on vaccines, doing research. Nate Silver says turning down a debate me challenge isn't the own that people think. Having rhetorical skills in an adversarial format before a large audience is a nice but fairly niche skill that doesn't really correlate with underlying accuracy or really even courage of one's conviction. So there's a lot of really good arguments as to why you shouldn't go on this platform. But somebody might say, well, if they're going to give you $2 million, I guess you could use that to create more vaccines to save lives. But I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, I just worry it'll set the field back. Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I have a lot of respect for and admire, went on an anti-vaccine podcast, and I think if anything, it set us back. It doesn't really help us. So, my life now has got two parts to it. One, it's, making vaccines for the world's poorest people, making vaccines for the world. And that's something I set out to do 40 years ago when I did my MD Ph.D. in New York. And then the other is defending vaccines. And that's something I didn't sign up for, but it just kind of fell to me because I have a daughter with autism and wrote that book a few years ago called Vaccines Did Not Cause Rachel's Autism. That gave me a front row seat to all of this. And what I've done is put it all in writing, right? Both in scientific papers and in books. And that, and I realize not a lot of people necessarily read books, but, I've put it down there. And if RFK Jr. has issues with what I've written, fair enough, let him counter it. But that doesn't seem like what he wants to do.
I appreciate you joining me to talk about all this. I didn't want to get into too much of the accusations or the science around it, but I wanted to talk about kind of what's unfolded and how you see it and the history of this. So
I'm just trying to understand. It's I don't know what to do with it. I mean, you've got Elon Musk, going after me, and what's that about? And Steve Bannon going after me, and so it's got this element. It's got definitely these political overtones, and I can't quite put my finger on it, but it seems to me it's very much the attacks are very much politically motivated.
No doubt about it. This is a huge wedge for the right now. It just is. I mean, you understand that as well as anybody. It's also part of the information that correlates to COVID deaths, isn't it? I mean, you always be challenged on those numbers, as everybody should, about how many people died as a result of not getting vaccinated. I think nationwide, it's like 200,000, you say?
Yeah, and if you look at who died, it definitely it's not evenly distributed. First of all, it's more in southern states, more in red states. And my colleague, Charles Gaba, works for ACA Signups, was among the first to do these analysis showing that the redder the county, the lower the immunization rates, the higher the death rates. And it's been confirmed by the New York Times. David Leonhardt of the New York Times calls it red COVID, and Axios and National Public Radio. And it's hard to talk about because, we're training as physicians and scientists. So you're not really supposed to talk about Republicans and Democrats and liberals or conservatives. We're supposed to be politically neutral. But, if you want to save lives, I haven't found a way to talk about it without talking about it. I mean, I could care less about somebody's conservative views, even extreme views, right? I mean, that's not my business. My point is to say somehow we have to uncouple the anti-science from this because too many Americans are losing their lives.
Would you debate me right now about hot dogs, sandwich or not?
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, not where I grew up in New England. I don't think you could do that. I mean, it's a lobster roll a sandwich. Is a clam roll? No, it's a roll, right? I just can't go there with
Wow, now you sound like a lobster shill.
That's right.
He's in the pocket of big lobster.
You can take the boy out of West Hartford, Connecticut, but you can't take the West Hartford, Connecticut out of the man.
I appreciate you talking to me. I know there's a lot of pressure on you in so many different ways, but I hope that you know that there's so many of us that support you and your work and your courage.
Yeah, the aggression's pretty bad right now, but it does. All I can say is I've seen maybe not quite this bad, but it's been bad before, and it comes in waves. It's usually, I remember when Tucker Carlson was going after me. Actually, it was on the same day I got nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize together with my colleague and Dr. Patazzi. And I guess he didn't feel I should enjoy the day too much. So he really went on a harangue against me on that evening.
I'm reminded.
And that always sets off a whole, it's the fellow travelers because, they believe this stuff and they send you horrible emails and write terrible things, or they stalk you and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the instant amplification of social media is just hard to really quantify. Right. I wonder if Jonas Salk, who you actually met and spoke to, was attacked this way, the way you and others have been.
No, he only had to endure the attacks in academia, which is and those guys don't screw around. I mean, their weapons are vicious, innuendo, faint praise. I mean, it's just brutal.
Peter Hotez, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Pete. And thanks for all your ongoing support. And it does mean a lot because, the worst is facing this stuff alone.
Yeah, you're not alone. There's so many of us that got your back. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. You're the best.
All right.
There you go, Dr. Peter Hotez, everybody. Go follow him on Twitter. Go get his books. Go let him know that you heard him here on the show. And if you're a new listener and considering a subscription, go to patreon.com/PeteDominic or standupwithpete.com. Rate and review the podcast, Spotify and Apple. Be kind, be nice to each other out there. Be curious. Thank you, Dr. Peter Hotez, for joining me. John Carroll sings our music, and he sings us out. GreatJohnCarroll.org right now to go buy it.
When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. great needs, you gotta stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. You got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.